In this video, we're talking about how to counter Ao Kuang. This video will give you a basic overview of how you can counter the god and also how a player that knows about these tactics can potentially counter some of those himself when playing Ao Kuang. The points we'll be addressing are relic choices, items and counter building in that regard, positioning, strategies, and this implies stuff like split pushing as well, warding, and god picks or direct counter picks. Before we jump into this topic, a quick word on Ao Kuang's current state. Ao Kuang is currently considered very, very strong, especially in ranked. In competitive, he's fallen off a little bit, but he's still relatively strong. People simply learned how to play as teams better and counter him better in that scenario. He still regularly has very strong performances, especially when certain players that enjoy the god pick him, for example, adapting. However, he has fallen off a little bit from being the ultra top tier, top pick jungler in competitive. Yet still, his popularity and performance in ranked and casuals hasn't declined. You will see him plenty, you will see him banned plenty as well, especially if you play ranked. As such, the need to learn how to counter this god is very much there. With that, let's get into the topics. Number 1, relics. There is one relic that really stands out when countering Ao Kuang, and that is Purification. Ao Kuang only has a single hard crowd control ability in his kit, which happens to be his ultimate leading up to the execution. As such, being able to counter that takes away a significant chunk of his damage, as you won't be executed if you use Purification, or as it's formerly been known as Beats, when you get ulted by him. The moment he connects to you with a sword, you can just use Purification and his ultimate is gonna go on cooldown and be cancelled. So that gives you a very high advantage in fights, simply because Ao Kuang basically almost always relies on his ultimate to finish his targets off. The other relic that's really strong against him, which I would also recommend on squishy characters especially, is Sanctuary, formerly known as Aegis. The fact that Sanctuary allows you to counter burst very hard is very potent against Ao Kuang. He will not CC you before he attacks you in most scenarios, unless somebody else CC'd you beforehand. As such, you can just use Sanctuary whenever he engages onto you, and that way prevent the majority of his damage coming from the 3 and the following dragon from the 1. And that's almost all of his burst potential gone right there. A relic that is more aimed at the supports and solo laners is Meditation. Meditation can be very good because it can put you above threshold and you can actually bait out Ao Kuang's ultimate. So if you're very low and Ao Kuang is engaging on you, you use Meditation in the last moment before he ults you, and you will heal up and not get executed when he thought he had a secure execute, and that will often lead to you being able to turn the fight onto him and kill him instead. There is a last honorable mention that I'm just throwing out there, and that is Blink. Especially if you're playing a god that has no mobility at all, it can make sense to get Blink if you have a really good reaction time. Because if he blinks onto you and you blink away right away before he hits you, then it kind of takes away a lot of his damage potential as well. This is very advanced compared to the other though, and I would recommend generally sticking with Purification and Sanctuary on squishies and Meditation on more tankier players. Let's move on to items that you can counter build with. There are 4 items that I will mention here, and not all of them are applicable for all gods. The first one being Ancile. Now Ancile is only for physical characters, so not everyone can get this, but it's relatively potent against Ao Kuang, especially early on. It has a decent magical protection, 60. It has some cooldown reduction, which always helps with using escape more against him, stuff like that. But what's the most important part here is the passive. Whenever you take magical damage from an enemy ability, you unleash a shockwave that silences all enemies within the range of 30 units for 1 second. This effect can only trigger every 60 seconds. This silence is very, very potent against Ao Kuang because it takes away his potential to follow up the damage that he's doing with an execute or whatever for at least a second. And often, especially in team fights, a second will be enough to shut him down or make him use his escape as soon as he can after and stuff like that. So the silence here really makes this stand out, as Ao Kuang is almost always in a 30 unit range of you when using his abilities. The next one, which is a little bit more generally applicable, is Magi's Blessing. Magi's Blessing absorbs a single hard crowd control effect every 70 seconds. The thing here is that the only hard crowd control that Ao Kuang has is his ultimate. So you're basically able to counter his ultimate once every 70 seconds. Now the problem is that obviously his team will have other characters that also have crowd control effects, so as such it's not always that effective depending on how many characters are able to take the effect of Magi's Blessing from you. But when Ao Kuang is on his own and trying to shut you down, then he will struggle as long as you have Magi's Blessing, simply because he will blow up his ultimate just to get rid of your bubble, so to speak. As such, it's a decent counter. It also has a lot of extra health and some magic protection, which can always help you. And I think especially for those characters that cannot really afford to go into heavier defense items against a particular character, this item is very, very good. So for example, for mid lane mages. The third item is more towards the heavy defense against a particular character side. The item I'm talking about here is Bulwark of Hope. Bulwark of Hope just has a ridiculous amount of health and magical protection, 60 magic protection and 200 health to be precise, plus a shield. Now the shield will not directly help you against an execute. You can actually execute through a shield. We ran some tests here and you can see that if you get the shield and Ao Kuang ults you right away, then you can still die to the execute. However, if there is the slightest delay in his ultimate and you get a little bit of health back beforehand, then you can easily get a buff threshold for the execute before he can even ult you. So if you're able to keep the distance for 1 to 2 seconds after getting the Bulwark shield, then you will be above execute once again, and he has to go through your shield first. So the shield is not the main point here. The main point is the massive amount of defense in terms of magical protection and health, but the ultimate threshold most certainly helps in combination with the shield. There is another item that does that a lot better though. That item is Mantle of Discord. Now Mantle of Discord, different from Bulwark of Hope, has an effect that completely negates the ult at 30% health. You have the Shockwave that stuns enemies around you for a second, and this is enemies that are close to you, so Ao Kuang will be in that range, and you get CC immunity for 1 second. So if you hit the threshold, then Mantle of Discord will CC Ao Kuang and give you CC immunity for a second to walk away from him. Probably the best item against him at the moment in my opinion. The problem with it is that it's a little more expensive than the other ones. As such, you should consider if you can afford it, if it's worth it in your particular build, and then implement it into it. So this item can be built on anyone pretty much as well. It is very expensive, but it's just a single slot item that gives you a variety of defenses, and it works very, very well against Ao Kuang. So with those 4 items, you should have every potential scenario covered. If you want to go more aggressive, you go for items like Ancile. If you just need to survive, then Mantle of Discord. The next point is positioning. Now, as for positioning, there's not too much to say other than if you stay in a group, you have a better chance against Ao Kuang. Don't stay too grouped, don't allow the enemy gap to blink into you. But if you stay closer together, then you'll have a much harder time to get into your group and find a pick without getting locked down by anyone beforehand or silenced or stuff like that, which can really harm his plays. Ao Kuang is usually looking for people at the outskirts of teamfights, the targets in the backline that can easily be picked off, and the more attention you pay to those, the safer you are. If you are a target that is prone to be attacked by Ao Kuang, then your best bet is to hold on to your escape. Ao Kuang will typically engage with Blink in most scenarios, and when he does and you use your escape right away, you may be able to dodge a decent amount of his damage already. He can still follow up with his stealth and close the distance to you, but that will put him in a much more vulnerable spot as well, because he then has no escape to get out after. And if he then doesn't burst you immediately, then he might easily die as long as someone else is around, or you are closer to a tower or something like that. You're also automatically taking away one of his damage tools, which is the decoy from the one, which will otherwise sometimes be used to get that extra damage to kill you or put you beneath the threshold. As for the general strategy against Ao Kuang, he is weak early. You have to abuse this. First of all, you should consider if you can invade. Invades are rough at the moment, it's a risky play, but it can pay off against Ao Kuang, who really can't do much against it on level 1. Early game aggression other than that is also very helpful. His early game damage is really not that high until he gets a few items going. CC is always strong against him because he is so squishy, because he only invests into damage most of the time. Dynasty played him as a defense item at best, really. Split pushing can work against Ao Kuang simply because his split push means are very limited, so it's something worth keeping in mind if you're a character that can't directly trade with him all too well. It's also worth noting that you can see where he moves in his decoy, so you will see the direction he used the decoy in by the water splash on the ground. However, the Ao Kuang, if he's a better player, will know about this and can just do the decoy in place and then walk backwards and stuff like that and kind of toy around with that and basically play mind games with you. This brings us to warding. Warding is key against Ao Kuang. He will look for engages from the side, from the jungle, over the wall, stuff like that, and you need to ward. Same as with Loki really, stealth characters are significantly weaker when you can spot them out before they are even able to engage and go into stealth or use their blink. As for counter picks to Ao Kuang, I will just mention those in the assassin class because those are really the ones that are looking to jungle against him where it makes sense. The first one would be Arachne. Arachne can really abuse him with her spiders who reveal stealth, with her dot which reveals stealth, with her 1v1 trading potential against him, and with some self-sustain and the potential to build some defense item against his burst. Bastet, because she also has those dots and she has means of stopping him like her cats, that he has not too much of a way to get around, and who also can split push if it all goes downhill, which he can't do much against. The third one is Serket. Serket is a very good counter to Ao Kuang simply because she matches him in bursts and can build full damage as well. Even some defense compared to him, she can easily fit a Mantle of Discord into her build. She has that dot damage and she can really take him out easily. The problem is that she will just have less impact overall because she's so focused on a single target. A new god just came out recently, and that's Camazotz. Camazotz should have a decent time against him with his high burst, with his dots, with his old NCC immunity. So we could see him being picked up against Ao Kuang as well. It's a little too early to tell. Hun Batz also does very well against him because of his high burst and because of his AoE CC. His ultimate really gives Ao Kuang a hard time because you can basically disrupt him from engaging on anyone in your team the moment you show up because the ultimate is such a large radius and it can be placed at a decent range. Then there is Loki, who is, while not really a jungler, a very strong assassin against Ao Kuang. One of the few guys he's really strong against simply because he matches him in burst and he also builds into full damage. He also has the stealth and mobility. So they're really equal in ways that allow Loki to shine here, whereas he doesn't shine so much in teamfights overall. Ne Zha, in the same sense, as soon as he picks up Ao Kuang is pretty much dead meat. You just need to land your ultimate and that's it. You just have to be able to get to that point. But if you consider that you have the ring toss, you have the lockdown, and you have the ultimate, then Ne Zha has a really good shot against Ao Kuang, in addition to the fact that he can heal himself, so Threshold may not work against him. Other than that, it's also worth pointing out that healers, especially those who have a certain amount of burst heal, like Guan Yu or Hel, can work very well against him, despite of Hel not being at the meta at the moment. If you are able to heal someone who is right below Threshold, that will always help. These are my tips against Ao Kuang. I'm sure there are quite a few more, so feel free to drop them in the comments down below. Other than that, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you all for the next one tomorrow. And what I'd like to point out in this particular video is that I have a Discord channel, and many people don't know about this. If you check the description down below, there's a channel, discord.gg/DukeSloth. I announce my streams there, I announce some other stuff there from time to time. You can chat with me from time to time. All that kind of stuff. If you're a subscriber to my Twitch channel, you get some extra channels and stuff like that as well. So feel free to check that out and stop by and say hi. DukeSloth, out.